The back of part 3 is where we're at right now for this SDragon. If you're nervous about your length of Nymo, weave in your end, splice in a new one. Make sure that you're comfortable with your thread as you go into the tail of the SDragon. We are going to be using a peyote technique with it, but we got to make the base of the peyote first. So instructions say string 50 beads on your thread to get it started. With me adding and counting and double counting and triple counting my 50 beads. So we'll be right back with those 50 beads on here. With the 50 beads, 50 H beads on the string, we still have to make the peyote stitch base happen. To do that, we're going to pick up one more H bead, and then we're going to skip that 49th bead and go, skip the 50th bead and go through the 49th bead on the string. Only the 49th bead. Try to thread all the way through, not too tight, but just to be snug. You still want this to be loose and movable. Otherwise, your dragon will not have a curl. It'll have more of a straight tail than a curl. And then you're going to pick up another H bead, skip the next H bead on the string, and go through the one after. Now you got a space where a B bead could fit in. Sorry, I'm trying to just angle this so you can see the space. A B bead could fit in between those two A's. H's even. They're the same size as the A's, that's why I keep saying A's. Pick up another, skip one, go through the next. And I also added the tip here. Try not to go through the thread that is in the strand. Go to the side of it, and always on the same side. That'll give you a lot less trouble when it's time to go back with the peyote stitch. And we're going to keep going with picking up a bead and skipping a bead and going through the next over and over and over again, about 25 times actually. Securing the tail to the body at the end, I'm going to go through the C bead that we started in. Hopefully. Through a C bead that we started in. There we go. And then back out the side, or the end, through the C bead next to it. Like this. And that's where you want to be when you start adding your Delica B beads. And I will zoom this in so you can really see it up close. So we've gone into the C bead and out through the C bead next to it, and we're in position to start adding B beads in between all of these H's. Nice, right? We have the peyote base, the back of the tail built up and ready to go, and I have exited the C bead next to where we started the base so I can start doing the peyote stitch. on side 1 to the tail tip and back, and then side 2 to the tail tip and back. I will not make you watch the entire process. I'm just going to show a few of these where you pick up a bee bead and you go through the H that is to the side. My photos are pretty close up on that, but some people may have a tough time seeing through the pink bead. Hopefully the blue beads can help. And we just snug that bee bead in there like a bug in a rug. And keep going like that all the way down the tail. The most awkward part about this process is going to be how to hang onto the tail while you're working with it, because you don't want to have your tail stand out straight. You want it to have a nice curl. So you kind of want to keep it held over your finger and at a curl in order to, 1, keep the curl going, and 2, maybe help prevent you from drawing your thread too tight. The tighter this Nymo goes on this part, the straighter your tail could end up being. If you want a really cute curl on it, like this guy, you gotta let it have a little bit of wiggle room. Not too much and not too little. Keep adding beads all the way down. I'm going to get rid of that tail pretty quick. I finished the first row of bee treasure beads going all the way down the tail, and I'm going to go all the way back to the base now with the same beads. So at the tip of the tail, this probably sounds familiar from the main body, you're just gonna pick up a bee bead, go through the last bee bead you added in row 1, and go all the way through with your Nymo. And you do that all the way back, the way you traveled. Again, be careful not to pull your thread too tight. But you should have a bee bead in between all of the bee beads all the way to the base of the dragon. There is one last bee bead to add in, and this time we're going to go through the first bee bead of row 1 and also the C bead that you started in on this side of the SDragon. Maybe without picking up the tail of your thread or, you know, snagging yourself on the actual tail of the dragon. Yeah, let's try to keep that neat and pretty. And now the first 2 rows of the bee beads are connected, and we got to do the same thing on the other side. So the needle is going to go through the dragon, to the other side, and you want to come out of this C bead beside the last one on the spine. Wow, my thread could stop knotting anytime now. So you want your thread to go through the C bead on the other side of the SDragon to add in the bee beads to mirror what you've already done on the first side. We're going to peyote from the base of the SDragon to the tip of the tail on the SDragon, and 1 bead at a time. 1 B bead, you skip the space and you go through the next available H bead. Just like that, without catching the tail of your thread. Your body is probably going to want to, or not your body, your tail is going to want to curl a lot as you go through this process. So don't be afraid to wrap it around your finger and hang on to it in whatever way you need to accommodate that curl for your dragon. One B bead through the H bead. And I've noticed too that I'm actually working on the opposite side than the instructions tell you to, because I started on the wrong side compared to the instructions, but really both sides get worked up and they'll both be exactly the same when you're done the process. So if you also make that mistake, don't worry about it, just keep going as if you're on the right side, because the instructions don't change. And I'll be back when I'm done all this peyote stitch. Okay, so I have made it to the end of the tail tip on the other side of the body with the B beads, and now it's time to go back towards the tail base with the B beads, peyoteing all the way. You pick up 1 B, turn it around, go through the last one you added in that other row 1, and then keep going, picking up 1 B bead at a time until you get to the base of the tail. You see I have my dragon tail wrapped around my finger, and that's kind of what I meant when I was saying in that last little bit, where it may want to curl so badly that this is the only way to really hold it while you're going from the base of the dragon to the tail tip. But hold it whatever way is comfortable for you, in whatever way doesn't straighten out your tail curl, because you really want to have a nice curl to your SDragon to get that almost infinity shape when it's all done being put together. And I will see you when we start adding sea beads. I have made it all the way back to the base of the SDragon, almost. I just wanted to make sure I showed this last B bead going in here. So let me find my focus spot for the moment. So last B bead goes between the first and second of row 1, but then we're also going to go through the C bead that we started in, which is this C bead right here. And I'll fix my focus so you can see that closer. So that's a C bead I started from with row 1 and 2 of the B's. Needle goes all the way through without catching on any other tails like it did. And draw it snug. Notice that the tighter you draw this part, the higher up your tail will lift to meet the body, and that is perfectly okay. Just don't tug it so that it breaks. And now when we go back into row 3, we are switching to the C beads. We're going to go up a row, that's row 5's seed bead, and fill in all the B's with the C's now. Which means you gotta get all of these put away because I'm done with them. And I gotta get these out. And we're gonna peyote some more. Pick up a C bead, put it through the B bead, and so on and so forth all the way to the bottom of the dragon tail. What makes this row different from the last, however, is we are not going back up this same side again. Instead, we are going to do a taper maneuver at the end of this peyote, where it will cause the tail to get more narrow without making knots, please. Pick up the sea bead, go through the bee bead, getting the tail out of the way, which is getting really annoying, but I just wasn't ready to tuck it in yet. See through the bee. So I'm just about at the tail tip of the SDragon. The last couple of beads, picking up C's and putting in between the B beads and trying not to go through my thumb because nobody wants that. And like I said before, we're not going to be going back with the peyote stitch. Instead, we're going to taper down the tail, and that means we're going to cross over and put these two B beads together. So we're crossing the body, going through the B bead at the tip on the opposite side, then you're going to go through the C bead that you just added, and that will draw it to the middle of the dragon tail belly. And you go back through the B bead on the opposite side again. I should rephrase that. You go back to the opposite side again and go through the next B bead. When you're all done this maneuver, this taper down, you should have a closed off tail tip. And you'll have two B beads, a C bead centered, and two B beads. The blues aren't showing up very well on my camera with the focus being so messed up, so give me a second and I will give you a real good, clear, hopefully, picture of these. So it looks like the dots on a six-sided dice, the number 5, 2 dots on the bottom, a dot in the middle, and 2 dots on the top. And the tail tip is closed and tapered down. Then you're going to keep picking up C beads and going back to the base of the tail, but on the other side from where you were. So we're building up both sides of the SDragon tail equally now. We're not working on one side and then working on the other side. The whole tail is being built equally. I'm just trying to get my dragon into a position where I can work and add beads as it flops down again. I do prefer my tail to stay curled around my finger because then I know that I'm not going to draw my tension too tight and make the tail straighten out. So that's why I keep fighting to have it curled here instead of just working on it from the table. Another thing that I will do instead is actually hold it by the curl, looking at the side that I'm working on, and just go along the side. These are just ways again to make sure that my dragon tail doesn't straighten out on me. You're more worried about your Nymo thread being too tight on a project like this than being too loose. Because if it does have spaces and gaps because their thread was loose, you can always go through again with another piece of thread and pull it together. What you cannot do, however, is loosen a thread that is too tight without cutting it and possibly frogging or redoing a part of it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go with the sea beads, peyote all the way to the base of the dragon tail, and then peyote on the same side back down to the tail tip again. I just about am at the base of the dragon where the tail meets up. I gotta go 2 more sea beads in here. That's 1 and 2 through the same sea bead on the other side. So I want to just make sure I'm going through the right one here. Yep. 2 in. So we're going here. Before we added this one, the first bead of row 4. At the end of row 3, we went in through this sea bead because it's the one that matches the other side of row 3. It's where we started. I'm just trying to get my needle in to show you. So we went in through here and we went around and out through here, this sea bead, and then through the last sea bead that we added, this guy. And you pick up a bead and you snug it in and it's good to go again. We're gonna go all the way to the tip of the tail for that next taper maneuver. We are back with the taper technique, picking up the last sea bead to the tail tip. And we are going to cross over to the other side of the SDragon tail into the last sea bead on that side. Then through the sea bead we just added and back across again through the next sea bead there. That is taper number 2 for the tail tip accomplished. Time for us to keep adding bee beads and peyoteing back to the base of the tail again. This part builds up really fast. We are adding the last couple of beads in row 4, and then it's on to row 5 of the SDragon. Try to keep somewhat in focus for you. So when we started this row, we went through the sea bead, we came back out through the sea bead. This time around, we're just going to go through the sea bead there at the end. And we want to be at the outside of the D bead, no, sorry, B as in Bravo bead, in order to get row 5 started. Which is the bead that's right there, right there. Go through that. And just pick up a C bead right away to fill in that space. And continue your peyote down the tail of the dragon, like you did before. Pick up a sea bead, go through a sea bead, pick up the next sea bead, and so on and so forth. Getting really close to that taper point again at the tip of the tail. One more sea bead after this one. And in case you need to see it again, we are going to cross over from this sea bead to the other side of the body's matching sea bead. We're going to go through the last sea bead you added in row 5. And then you're going to go back over to that new side's next sea bead and peyote up the side of the body here. It's really, really hot today, so my dexterity is starting to suffer. Maybe you've noticed. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you're kind and won't say a thing. I appreciate it. Oh, my poor dragon. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get a hold of you. Adding the last sea bead for this row 5, and now we're on to row 6, which is the belly of the SDragon tail. But in order to finish this row, we got to go through the treasure bead that matches where we started, row 5. Make sure you draw it in nice and close. And we're going to double back through the A bead that is closest to you. This puts us in a nice centered spot. For the peyote, go back through the C bead you just added because you want to put your first eye in the space of peyote between that last C bead you added here and the second last C bead you added. I'll show you what I mean. I pick up the I bead and I go through the next available C in the peyote, and the I bead is snugging into that space, not against the belly yet, but into the peyote space. There's a method to this madness. We're going to fill this gap here with A beads after we're done closing off the tail. So at this point, we're going to add I beads all the way to the tail tip, all the way to the tail tip. And I'll show you how the closure is going to work when we get there. We're just about at the taper points with these eye beads now. And to do the closure, it's actually really easy. In fact, you've already done it before with the spikes. It's like that taper maneuver, just over and over and over again. We're at the last available C beads. Going through. Now the I bead is in position. We're going to cross over to the matching C bead and then go through the I bead and then through the next C bead. So that would be a taper. If we were to start adding I beads again, then we'd be repeating the last row. But we're on row 6, and row 6 is where we get the belly in and the closure happening. So now we're going to go back into the I and back into the C, and we're going to zip this belly closed. Oh, but wait, we don't want a flat belly. Ooh, no, we want a rounded belly. So you take the last bit of your felt that has been included in your kit and give the end a really good twist so it's nice and narrow. And since you have the tail tip closed off, we're going to push the tip of this felt into that closed off space. Very careful, of course, you don't want to break your thread. That would suck at this point. And then give it some really good twists again to pinch the sides of your belly closed and keep zippering back towards the base of the tail. This is why in the instructions I say you want to make sure you have lots of thread available, because you don't want to have to splice in a thread halfway through a closure, right? I'm kind of playing closure chicken with my thread, but experience has told me I'll be fine. I'll be okay, right? Don't panic. We can get there. As I move around the tail, I'm going to keep just adjusting and doing my best to keep it pinched nice and tight. Twist the felt, pinch the belly closed. This is kind of one time where you do want to have your thread taut the whole way around. So don't let any saggy thread happen. Apologies, I hit my camera there. No saggy thread. Nice and taut all the way to the base of the belly. Oh, and don't let your thread hook on anything either, because that will cause gaps. It's starting to get awkward. I'm going to twist it and keep going. We are up against the base of the tail almost, but I want to show you this part with the felt. So I happen to have just enough felt to squeeze in here, and I'm going to tuck it right into the main body to make sure that it is nice and secure and stuffed right to the end. Be very careful if you're going to use scissors like I did, but you want that felt to be tucked right into the base of the body. I gotta keep adding eye beads in order to finish, or not keep adding eye beads, I gotta keep going through the eye beads in order to finish closing off the tail. I'm gonna add a couple, keep them loose, and then finish tucking in the felt and draw my thread tighter as I go. Just about there. Just about there. We go through the last C bead. And now through that A bead on this side, so that they stay matching and centered. And if you happen to see any felt sticking through, again, just carefully tuck it in and out of the way. I have to end my thread and start a new one, so I will show you the part with the A beads to fill in the belly in a few minutes. Okay, so we have added a new thread on here, and the tail of our dragon is all joined together. Two things before I start, of course. Let's make sure the light's working, and I want to make sure I have good camera control before I start showing you this next part. The belly of the dragon, we're going to go back to the A beads now to fill in all of the eye beads that we sealed together in the tail of the dragon. So let's get this autofocus off, and there's about good. So with your A beads, you're going to be putting 2 at a time in between each of the size 8, also known as the eye beads. And you're going to do that all the way from where the tail connects to the belly to the tip of the tail. I put this in the instructions, but as you get to the tip of the tail, you're going to notice that the tapering kind of interferes with the process. So when we get there, I'll show you what I like to do, but you're going to want to play it by ear on how you find it will look best for your finish. And then after this, we just have the flail and flail tips left, and the dragon is finished. Ah, no, it's caught. Hang on. Hang on. There we go. You might find that you need to really pull on the thread for this part of the dragon. This is the one time when you do want to have some good tension for your thread. And I mean, like, really tug it, not to the point of breaking, but until these 2 size 15 seeds, the 2 A beads, slip in between the 2 H beads and are not at weird angles against each other. Sometimes you might have to carefully bend your tail a little bit more or flex it a little bit more so that it opens up the space for the 2 beads to fall in. Sometimes it's just pulling on your Nymo hard enough and they will fall in there without problem. But if you don't, you'll end up with your A beads just kind of at weird angles, and it won't have that smooth belly fill look that a dragon's belly should have. Like, it should be scales. It should be nice and smooth, like snake scales, right? And even those, they kind of interlock and lay real flat. So I'm just going to go all the way to the tip of the tail. It's about 18 of these that we're filling in. Almost done. You see how nice and smooth it looks now? If you didn't fill these in, you would have a pretty jagged belly from the eye beads on their own. That's why I really love these finishing touches. Plus, it gets you to where you need to be to put the flail on the dragon's tail tip. Almost at the tapering.
And I do keep flexing the tail as I go. It's such a hard motion to make overt for you to see, but I am opening up the spaces carefully. Depending on how much tension you had in your tail when you were building it, you may have to flex the tail more, or you may not have to flex the tail at all. It's all going to be unique to you. Okay, so here's the taper. And you kind of see, like, this is a much larger space than between the two eye beads. So I'm actually going to pick up 3 or 4 size A's, depending on how many I need to fill in from this size 8 to that size 8. We'll see. We'll see. I think 4 might be too much, but actually, no. 4 is a great fit. And I'm going to do the same thing between the two C beads. Looks like 3 for this one. 1, 2, and 3. So from one C bead to the next C bead. Kind of makes a little bit of a swoop effect. And the last one, the C bead to C bead again, looks like 3. And then I'm at the tail tip. I am ready to start the flail. It's all filled in neatly, nice and smooth. Some dragons will have a metallic belly. Other palettes will just have a solid color belly like this blue cobalt does. But the effect, the smoothness of it is just always so satisfying to look at. As we go into the brick stitch, where you want to be is underneath one of the threads that go between these 4 B beads. Oh, I should say between these 2 B beads and these 2 A beads. So just slip your needle underneath any of them, whichever one makes the most sense for where you ended up, and kind of makes a knot at the same time as putting you in position to start the brick stitch. Your tail flail can be turned and twisted carefully for a final position, so don't be too worried about what way the paddle of the flail is facing while you're doing this part. Let's get these beads set up though, and then we will start the flail.